Good afternoon, I'm Lara Potter. I'm the chair of the Future Skills Group at the Association of Consultancy and Engineering, and I'm a partner at Arcadis. And I'm here today with my colleagues on the Future Skills Group, Andrew Henderson from Ramboll, Claire Clifford, who's the People Director at ACE, and Jane Grant is on the call with us today as well. So welcome to this Future of Consultancy webinar. Back in June, we launched a series of masterclasses on leadership in a digital age, which focused on how to navigate the digital skills gaps in workforce and the digital challenges that we as leaders face, and for managers in both small and medium-sized enterprises and in larger organisations. Today's session will focus on leadership around innovation and the application of technology. In October, we'll have our final masterclass on the shifting relationship between clients and consultants. These masterclasses explore how business leaders and managers can adapt to the changing digital landscape and navigate the skills challenges which this creates. Today, we have two really fantastic speakers. May Winfield is the Global Director of Commercial, Legal and Digital Risks at the international engineering firm Buro Happold, and Sarah Wilkes is the Global Innovation and Ecosystems Officer for Arcadis. Each will present for about 20 minutes, and after the presentations, my colleague on the Future Skills Group, Andrew Henderson, will facilitate a question and answer session. So if you have any questions, please do send these directly to the panelists via the chat box, which you should be able to use through Zoom, and we will pick these up at the end of the session. Your questions will be anonymous to the wider audience. So with no further ado, I would like to hand over to May Winfield, Global Director of Commercial, Legal and Digital Risks at Buro Happold. And I think, May, you're going to share your screen.
I am, thank you, Lara. I'll just share my screen. So hopefully you should be able to see my slides.
Not yet.
Let me try again. I always forget to click the second button.
We have it. Thank you, May.
Cool. Okay. So I'm just going to run through some of the common construction technologies in use, why they're good and of benefit, but also some of the risks and issues and how to overcome them. As you heard, I'm the Global Director of Commercial, Legal and Digital Risks at Buro Happold. I'm a specialist in BIM and construction technology. I've been working in that area for over 10 years and been a lawyer for over 17. I've led various drafting teams for some of the key standard form documentation in particularly in BIM. For those of you who haven't heard of Buro Happold, you've probably heard of some of our projects, including Museum of the Future. We're very technology focused, and because we are talking about technology, I wanted to mention the BOM, which is a open source technology which is industry-wide, and it's a computational project aiming to enable greater collaboration, which is hindered by interoperability, and we've used it to develop various types of technology and dashboards, for example. We also have things like the workplace analytics, a new software which analyzes real-time data to enable clients to make better decisions. And analytics is all about bringing technology and humans together, and this is what it focuses on. But thinking now about construction technology, you will read and hear about a lot of different types of technology, and some are real and some are probably more in the realms of fiction. So you have things like 3D printing and modular construction and drones, and there's so much good stuff going on in that regard. But there's also things like AI, and which isn't quite in the realms of what we see in the movies. But looking at some of the key technologies that are probably most useful and have the most impact at the moment, there's BIM and digital twins, BIM being a process involving 3D modeling. and digital twins being a digital representation of a physical asset, and really using a BIM model to enable one to do that. And there's a lot of benefits in this. A lot of big projects are now using BIM and increasingly digital twin. The reason being, with a BIM model, you avoid any on-site variations because you're effectively building and designing the asset virtually before you even step onto site. You can pick up all those issues. There's better health and safety. You can see where are there going to be real problems on site, and you can just rework your plans accordingly. You can create more arguably cutting edge designs because you can check things in a more accurate way. It's shown to save time and cost. The government's pilot project showed that it can save up to 20% in design and construction costs, and even more at your facility and maintenance stage. The BIM and digital twins, by their nature, require parties to collaborate, and that means necessarily you're going to have fewer disputes. People have disputes often because there's misunderstandings, because there's mismanaged expectations. Turning to blockchain and smart contracts, you would have seen nowadays lots of posters and ads about blockchain and Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is just an element of blockchain. It's not the same thing. For those of you unfamiliar with the technology, to put in simple terms, you input a data, and every time you input some more data, it attaches as a new part of the chain. No one can change. You can't delete parts of the chain once they're put in, and therefore that means it's a single source of truth. You can see what's happened over the course of time. There's pros and cons to that, obviously, construction being a very changing beast. It's also very hack resistant. It's not hack proof. There's a lot of autonomy. You're not waiting for intermediaries to click a button. However, there obviously computers aren't infallible, but the argument would be that they are perhaps more consistent than a potential human error of input. They are very secure and very efficient. Turning to modular and design for manufacturing and assembly, or modern methods of construction, all kind of mean similar things. You're basically building parts of your asset in a factory, shipping them onto site and assembling them. There's a lot of saving of costs and time with this. You don't have to bring in parts. You can make them in the factory exactly what you need. You don't need extra. You can, again, create designs which are perhaps more difficult in the traditional sense to replicate in particular. And you'll find that modular is very popular with, say, hotel owners who have a particular design that they want to roll out each time. And you're reducing waste. And talking about efficiency of transport, The Economist said that prefabricated, so modular houses in California were estimated to slash 2 tons of the amount of CO2 emitted per home due to the reduction in lorry journeys. And that doesn't even take into account the rest of the environmental benefits. Turning to drones and robotics, I'm sure you're familiar with drones. Again, there's a lot of cost and time saving. A drone can travel across site very quickly compared to a person. There's a lot of helpful health and safety benefits, getting to hard to reach, very dangerous areas. You have data accuracy. The drones or the robots, you might have seen Spot the Dog on YouTube. Spot the Dog, the robot goes across site, takes a laser scan. You have accurate data that you can then immediately feed into your BIM model, into your computer systems, and that's at real time. However, this isn't without legal issues and problems, as with all new things. And this is some real life examples I've encountered over time. And Some of it's about, with new technology, you have a lot of jargon, a lot of acronyms. So with specifications, sometimes there'll be do some BIM, or give me some models, use drones on this site, achieve net zero carbon. None of these things actually mean anything from a legal and contractual perspective. They mean whatever you want them to mean. Equally, if there's very vague comments about we want to use your data or we want to use your models. If you are using particular terminology, or you want something, you want a particular output, a particular result from the technology, it's worth setting it out in detail. Or if you see very vague requirements or specifications, flesh it out with your client, because what you think it means and what the other party thinks it means, probably going to be wildly different. Equally, there's very differing expectations. You can have clients say, well, this isn't what I thought it would do, or it doesn't have what I thought it would have in it. Again, it's about talking, about writing it down, because the person you're talking to now, it's probably not going to be the same person looking at it in 2 years, 5 years from now. I've mentioned there a UK case called Trant and Mont MacDonald, and in the interest of time, I won't go into detail, but suffice to say, if you are using a cloud computing, or you're all storing your data in one place, be very aware about who has access to that, who can turn off the tap to enable you to have access to all that important data that you need to run the project. So give you some examples of some of the issues, harking back to the technologies I mentioned. So think of modular construction or DFMA. It requires really early design decisions. It's really hard to change the design when you're in the middle of the manufacturing process. So it's a different way of working. You therefore have a more design and assembly, but equally, who is responsible for making sure the program's met? What is the program of the manufacturer? What's the program of the designer, who are two different parties? Are you comfortable with the testing of what is quite a new technology and the particular design life? What's the KPIs that are set? Are there any? And if something's wrong with those modular pieces, who's responsible? Who will you say will be negligent? So when does the design responsibility shift from the designer, say the architect, the engineers, to the manufacturer? Again, these are sort of things you need to make clear in the contract. There's also new forms of insurance coming out to cater for modular buildings. Just very quickly thinking of now AI and smart contracts, machine learning, computers make errors. There can be coding bugs. Humans still have to input the information and they could make a mistake. Who takes responsibility for that? There's where you're using smart contracts, an automated version of a contract. There are certain parts which aren't suitable for it, such as clauses requiring a bit of an opinion. So have you exercised reasonable skill and care? The computer doesn't know. Be very careful if you're storing personal data on any sort of site or within any sort of blockchain. Have you complied with your GDPR? There's also issues when you use modern systems about the legal standing and enforceability, how courts, because it's very untested, how courts will interpret, say, a blockchain, a smart contract. Will they just apply normal legal rules, or will they find new principles which are more suited to perhaps a modern environment? One more example is about drones. Drones, as I said, so many benefits, but there's lots of potential claims for trespassing. What if they go over the neighboring site? What if something falls off them? What if the drone falls down? Is there sufficient insurance? Who's responsible contractually when these things happen, or if they do? There's a lot of very strict regulations as to registration of drones, people having the right licenses. And if you are using drones on site, it's worth checking that the drone operator has complied There are different regulations in the EU compared to the UK, so you can't just assume someone from the EU is registered in the right way. There's also potential, as ever, for data breaches or hacking, or just the data being lost as from the drone when it's being downloaded onto your computer. Again, who takes responsibility for that? Some of the other common obstacles, one of them is cost. All of this costs money. You need this right software, you need the right hardware, you need training. How do you decide which software, which hardware to select? It's worth doing some research, talking to right people. Don't jump into it. But conversely, don't let the costs hold you back because of the significant benefits. Certainly in Borough Happold, we find even if a client isn't requiring certain digital deliverables, the amount of savings we get from working digitally far outweigh the cost. And it's really mindset. The construction industry is not particularly known for modern progressive way of thinking. I often hear, well, I've been doing this the same way for 30 years and it's all gone fine. We haven't progressed that far past the bricks and mortar stage. And so you may need to show people why it's such a good idea. Certainly when I've been in rooms with people who've seen something that would take them a week, now will take them an hour. That's very compelling evidence to get them on board. Technology is a great communication tool. A couple of other ways of managing the risks. So one thing is start with the what. So with a blank piece of paper, to think, what's the process we're going to do? What's the technology? And what are the tasks? What are all the things we have to do to make it happen? And what are all the realistic things that could go wrong? And then the who. Of all those things that could go wrong and all those things that need doing, who needs to bear liability for that? Who should make sure it happens? And who should make sure they're mitigated? And how are those mitigating factors going to happen? How are they going to deal with the risk? Is it through process? It could just be as simple as keeping a record or having the right insurance. Do you need, say, cyber risk insurance, for example? Or is it just something that you say, well, you're the best person to work out how to deal with this. This is your problem. And all the way thinking, what's the size of the issue? If it's a very unlikely risk, but it's huge, if it's going to happen, you may want to take steps to mitigate it. However, if it's a very likely risk, but there are lots of very small likely risks, again, you probably want to take some mitigation steps because even though the size of the risk is small or the size of the loss is small, the likelihood of it happening means you want to think about it. And just I like checklists. It helps me not to forget things. And here's a non-exhaustive checklist of things to think about from a contractual perspective. So looking at the contract, is it clear that there's no gaps? Everyone, all the roles and the risks have been allocated. Are there reasonable exclusions and disclaimers? It should be clear not just what you're responsible for, but what you're not responsible for. Often I find that where people have the biggest liability or disputes is where there is a confusion or misunderstanding as to where a risk or obligation lies. And try and standardize things. As I said, standardize the terminology, or you put in what you mean, and making sure internally everyone's on the same page. You have the training, the records, internal processes, and that includes having sufficient training and understanding about what are the standards and laws that apply. They're changing all the time. This is such a fast moving area, but there's a lot of guidance out there. And I've put within Impact a couple of different links if you do have lawyers looking to draft terms which are for digital, more construction technology. There's a couple of links there which will hopefully help them. on their way in terms of how to put in terms which will cover all the main issues and have a sensible discussion with you. Some of those guidance also have templates which are really good for your technical team, particularly if they're starting out. And finally, there's just a link to find out more on the various aspects of the technologies I mentioned. And the last thing I would say is, as indicated by this quote, it's a really exciting time. There's so many things that can be achieved that we couldn't before. Certainly we can achieve things much faster. But if we don't deal with the risks and the issues, all those benefits are going to go away because you're going to spend all that time and that money having a dispute. Thank you very much.
May, thank you so much. And I love that quote that you've ended with there. It's a world of opportunity. But there were a few things that you said that really resonated with me. You talked about being able to sort of set out the details, so really defining some of those terms. And I think as consultants, some of these new elements, so one of your examples was, what does net zero mean in this context for this project, and being able to really get into the detail. But the one that really resonated with me was terminology that I think most of us as consultants will see in most of our contracts, which is the reasonable skill and care. And I think you sort of said very quickly, well, the computer doesn't know what reasonable skill and care is. So some of these things that we've got to grapple with as leaders now, I think very challenging. And thank you also for many suggestions in terms of where we can find additional information. So May, please stay around because I think we'll have a few questions at the end as well. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
So now to hand over to Sarah Wilkes, who's the Global Innovation and Ecosystems Officer for Arcadis. And I suspect, Sarah, you might be able to describe a little bit more what your role entails. Over to you, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura, and yeah, great to be here, and great presentation by May as well. And I might make some references to some of it through my session. So I've recently been appointed as the Global Innovation Ecosystems Officer, but I've been involved with digital transformation and the strategic sort of shift at Arcadis for the last 5 years. And it's been a journey for me personally, and some of the things that I'm going to share with you today are things that I've found useful to help frame conversations, but also to navigate some of the implementation of activities over the last few years. I'm responsible, for innovation and the development of our ecosystem partnerships at Arcadis. So really in the thick of a lot of this on a day-to-day basis now, moving forward. So the areas I'm going to focus in on today are 4 areas really. I've got some pointers and some tools around defining innovation, the need to embrace standardization and productization, the importance of building new ecosystems, and also, and May referred to it with some of the things that Bura Happold are doing, but be open to open innovation, because I think that's a real opportunity for us in our industry to accelerate the pace of change. So this is something that is not unique to Arcadis. This is tried and tested methodology out there in the marketplace, but something that we've certainly found very useful to lean on when we're talking to people about how you define innovation, and not all innovation is the same. So actually a big proportion of innovation that goes on in most organisations is actually incremental innovation. So that's the areas of the business, the markets, the clients that we know well. It's also the technology that we know well. It's tried and tested technology that's already out there in the marketplace that we're leveraging. And that's about that continuous improvement and us optimizing the technology available to us. And that's a big proportion of what most organisations do from an innovation standpoint. And that's probably somewhere on a spectrum of around 70%, 70 to 80% of the activity. The other aspects of innovation are around new innovation. Now, this can be leveraging existing technology and taking that to new markets, or it could be emerging technology and leveraging that into existing markets. But generally, it's creation of something that's different to what's already delivered by a business. So that could be the creation of new IP. You might be putting bits of existing IP together and collecting. It might be going to market in a different way with a brand new solution and delivering revenue in a different way. But often it's about trying and testing and developing prototypes to see where the need in the market is and understanding the problem to be solved. And then there's disruptive innovation, which can be on a spectrum to 0 to 5%, because as I say there, disruption very rarely comes from within. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about open innovation. So this is just a framework that I think is quite useful to help people navigate their way through what we're talking about when we're talking about what kind of innovation that we're doing. The next thing that I think as an industry we've really got to sort of start to motor on is embracing standardization. And I've added productization into this as well, and something that we at Arcadis have actually quite proud of is that we've really embraced Agile and the Agile methodologies, and we're stealing a lot of techniques and learnings from the technology industry to start to embed different approaches so that we can rapidly develop either standardized processes, or we can automate aspects of what we do, or we can actually come up with brand new solutions, and this forms the basis of a lot of the change that's happening at pace in many of our organizations. Standardization actually, it's not really in our DNA as an industry, as it is with other industries. And I think, you know, we're still fairly immature in this sense. I think it's also down to the complexities of the environment we operate in. You know, the fact that a nut or a bolt can cause catastrophic failure. You know, there are some significant complexities in the kind of assets and infrastructure that we're building. There are fragmented value chains. Often the decision makers are not necessarily the occupiers of assets or the users of assets. There's lots of regulation and local ways of working, and these are all barriers to standardization. But technology is actually that enabler. It's an enabler to standardization, and actually through using technology and optimizing the technology available to us, we can start to productize some of the solutions to scale and deliver benefits to customers and their customers in quite a different way. Now, not all our clients in the consultancy industry, not all our clients are ready for this quite yet, and we've still got work to do on the commercial aspects of how we might offer our services and solutions in different ways. But I think all of us are innovating around this. All of us, you know, I certainly talk to peers in our industry. We're all heading in the same direction, where we know we have to standardize, we know we need to leverage technology, and we've got to start to think about that make once, repeat often, because actually that does deliver value to our customers and can deliver change at pace and deliver outcomes at pace. So the next element is about exploring new ecosystems, and actually the need to build different partnerships, and technology has changed this quite significantly. There's again another framework there that I've stolen from our friends at Gartner, who obviously often come up with these really clever frameworks, but shows the different dimensions of what we mean by an ecosystem and why they're actually different to the transactional partnerships that we might ordinarily engage with, where we partner out of necessity as opposed to partnering for value. Ecosystems really should be a win-win, where you can grow together as a collective group of partners. Some factors that are really driving the development of quite complex but quite innovative ecosystems is that investment actually into technologies in our industry is at record levels and rising. There was an inflection point in Q1 this year where $10 billion had been invested into startups in our space. And the pace of investment between 10 billion and 50 billion happens very, very quickly. So more money is being ploughed into startups into our industry. And actually what they're focusing on in the main is picking off aspects of our processes in the life cycle, the asset life cycle, in the design, build, operate and maintain aspects of any asset. And they're starting to standardize and automate it. So the market will get organized at some point through startups, through ourselves, through a range of technology vendors. And all of a sudden, standardization actually will start to happen at pace, and automation will follow very, very swiftly. And we're all very aware of BIM and other technologies that have been in development for a long time, continue to change the way we do our business and our day-to-day roles. But that investment is significant and rising. One of the things that many of you will be aware of, or probably aware of, is the failure of Curated in the US. And I think the biggest learning point from that is not that they didn't know what they were doing. They actually didn't value the relationships with actually some of the existing market players, like the organisations we all work for. And I think the recognition now is that any new entrant to our marketplace, particularly the technology vendors, they need knowledge partners, and those knowledge partners are, the AEC industry organisations, because we have deep-rooted knowledge that would take them, a significant amount of time to sort of understand and be able to utilise that knowledge and turn that into value. So we have to really think about the role we as consultants and engineers play in the value chain, and how we redefine that value in the future, because we might only have 10% of a total solution, and the technology players and other players might have the other 90%, but without us, they can't complete the solution doesn't deliver value. So but we all have to rethink our role in some of these ecosystems moving forward. We've often been in leadership positions towards the client. Will that be the same moving forward? So let's all think about what those ecosystems look like and the role we all want to play in those moving forward. And then finally, really wanted to talk about something that I'm very passionate about and driving quite hard within Arcadis is be open to open innovation, and May referred to it, that open source and is not a common open source applications and technology is not commonplace in our industry, but should become more and more prevalent as we share data and as we come together in a more open way to think about how we move the industry on. A lot of the innovation in our industry goes on behind closed doors and is often driven by subject matter experts, which is great to a point. But what we find in our world is that that means we tend to start with the solution, not the problem. And actually with open innovation, there's a real discipline by saying, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And are we all agreed that that's the biggest problem to solve? And we're all going to get behind that to then bring our best brains to develop out the solution. And it's really about blending ideas. So we might have great ideas as subject matter experts in our respective disciplines, but equally a Microsoft, a Google, an Esri also have great ideas. And how do we bring all that together to deliver even more value to our clients and to bring about that change in our industry? So that collaboration actually could be even better than it is today. I think often it's very guarded in my experience. We collaborate out of necessity, not to optimise the outcome or the impact and bring about change in the industry. And I think we've all got to get behind that. And as I said earlier, disruption rarely comes from within. And the complexities of our industry means that we're very much needed to disrupt, but are we really driving it? So together, if we can work in partnership with those that want to come in and bring new and fresh ideas to our industry, that's got to be really powerful. So together, outsiders and insiders, we can accelerate the innovation in our industry. And I will leave it there, Lara.
Sarah, thank you so much. There's so much to think about in your presentation. I was writing a lot of notes to myself, and I think one of the things that really resonated with me was rethinking our role in the ecosystem partners. And that's really challenging, I think, for us. You know, the role hasn't changed for consultants and engineers in the built environment for very many years. So that's a significant challenge. I can hear some feedback. So I'm now going to pass over to Andrew, who's going to lead on a Q&A session. Thanks very much, Andrew.
Okay, I have some questions, but I don't have enough. So I'm inviting more questions. So the chat box is open. And I really would hope that people take the time to pose their questions. Now, since I'm the question master, I get the right to ask my question first, actually. So I got a question from May, and this is an issue that I'm wrestling with, and I'm sure lots of others are wrestling with as well. And it's a question of around lots of organisations are innovating, both in terms of save money, to automate, to go faster, but also to differentiate themselves. At the point of exposure to those real differentiators, a lot of consultants are wrestling with intellectual property challenges with clients, where our hard-earned innovations want to be owned by our clients. I just wondered if you wanted to comment on that, and is that industry-wide, or is it just unique for some consultancies? But you know, has that been tested, and how is that developing in the industry?
I think is a good question. And when technology first became more prevalent and digitization in construction over the last 10 years, the one thing that people kept asking was about copyright. Am I going to give up everything I've worked so hard to create? And that then stopped the collaboration for a long time. What I'd say is that, yes, clients are asking for certain aspects of it, but it's important to work out when you take, say, a digital model, which bits do you really care about? You care about your design. Do you care about the model itself? Do you want to reuse it? Do you care about which different bits within it? And I think that's where that is where it will assist, rather than just blanket anything I create I want to keep. Actually consider which of those are things, say templates, you want to reuse for each project, or is it something that's so specific to that particular project you will never reuse it again. So you can give it to the client with a you can say to the client, if you want this, there's a proportional fee to it. Rather than just saying, I'm not going to give you anything. But it does require change in mindset to where we were before.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, Sarah, in the SAFE roadmap, it identifies lean, agile change agents. How should we be thinking about the change in the ways of working to accelerate innovation?
Yeah, so this goes back to something I was talking at ACE sessions on last year, which is there's an element of mixing oil and water with agile in our industry, and sometimes it can go against the basis of our core commercial models. So we've got to start to think about how we bring new roles into our operating models, such as the role of a product owner, the scrum masters, the change leads, and think about how we are, and that's why I use productization as well as standardization, because that's a mindset shift. We often, you know, our clients will say to us, don't just give me your last best design, when actually that's exactly what they should be asking for. They should be saying, give me the last one you did that was the best one, and then let's enhance it. But often they pay us on a time basis or a people resource basis, even if it's fixed fee. And actually, having product owners, it's about reoccurring revenue, and it's about the scale of the revenue you can generate that delivers the value back to the organisation. So we've got to think about how we operationalize Agile in our organizations, and then that also feeds right through to how we get paid for that innovation. And often we are hemorrhaging value. So if we're automating parts of our processes and then we're being paid on a time and materials basis, actually the value is going out the door and we can't reinvest. So we have to rethink all of that, and that starts with our operating models in terms of how we've traditionally set ourselves up and then served the market and the commercial frameworks around that.
Yeah, I certainly see that value issue on a daily basis. As we automate and go faster, than people see that as their benefit rather than ours.
Clients love it, you know, why would they not?
No, exactly, right. Well, let's keep wrestling that one. So question back to you, May. So how do you see the relationship between legal teams and businesses will change as new products and innovative services come online?
So traditionally, and indeed in various places of work, you have the technical team, you have the project team, and then you have the legal team. And they all sit in their silos and don't necessarily talk to each other. And as a result, you will see contracts which have the technical documents bear little or no resemblance to anything else that's in the contract, particularly with the digital aspects. I think as things go on, and the way we do it in Borough Happold, we're very integrated. So I talk to the technical team on a regular discuss the same documents, and I think that will become the more common model, because ultimately, say a digital specification, various people need to look at it in different aspects, but then they need to talk to each other to make sure that what they're saying is all consistent. And I do see that more and more in the large organizations, that you have a integrated approach. One qualification I'd say to that, though, is you do need to upskill your legal team. You can't expect your lawyers to automatically understand digitization technology. You need to sit with them and explain to them the terminology and how it all works. They understand copyright, but they don't understand what's in a BIM model.
And interesting enough, May, how would you have, I mean, maybe your example at Borough Happold, but obviously there are people very motivated on winning work. And maybe they don't have the foresight to see some of the challenges digitally. But so how do you actually bridge that? How do you get those people to be educated from a legal standing?
I think you need a lot of buy-in from senior management, so you have to push-pull. If people see that the senior management are taking it seriously, they then as well. But also it's a lot of training. You need to go in and explain to people, if you don't do this, you will get in trouble and you will lose your company a lot of money. Suddenly people sit up and take notice. It's not just a nice to have older lawyers being a bod and pulling up obstacles again. It's like, no, this is what will actually happen. Here's some real examples. And I think what a lot of people don't possibly do is you need to talk to people in a way that interests them. It's like, why does this matter to me? I don't care what the case law says, what the legal principles are. I want to know how I can win the project, what the real problems are for me on site. And I think that is the way you enable people to understand and get their buy-in.
So it sounds like it's changing the language so that it's compatible on all levels. Okay. So the next question requires a lot of wisdom. So I'm going to put it to you, Sarah, for no apparent reason. But it's actually around innovation, and it's a question regarding what do you think the largest, biggest barriers to technology in our industry are? So that does need a lot of wisdom to answer.
I think fundamentally it's a trust. We, particularly in our industry, because the consulting and engineering industry is so people-based. Technology has always been there in one way, shape, or form. It's been there for a long time, but all the outputs have generally been delivered by people. And now what's switching is, self-generated outcomes in a way. Standardization of data and algorithms and the linking of data sets to come up with a solution potentially could be computer generated. So I think there's still a trust issue there, but then there's also a value conversation as well. So I think it's a no-brainer. We talked about it earlier. There's no brainer that you can save time on tasks using technology. I think everybody gets that. Everybody does it in their day-to-day lives. That's no-brainer. But the value sometimes aspect of that is getting lost in the conversation. I think we've got to work a lot harder on the value of people plus technology and what that might mean in the future to the accuracies. May referred to it in her presentation. You know, you're almost getting standardization by default with, you know, aligning your data in a certain way, and other organizations align their data in that way. So we're getting consistency, therefore things become more accurate by default. So I think that's part of the challenge. I'm not sure it's the biggest challenge, but the people technology dynamic, I think we're still trying to sort of work our way through what that looks like, and clients are really sort of trying to work out what that looks like as well. And we're maturing probably at quite a slow rate, I would say.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. It's a question from May, and it's really around the collaboration in the industry. Obviously, we're all together here because we're collaborating, but are we doing enough as an industry to share and support each other in the legal digitalization space? And is there a feeling that we could do more to actually bring up the bar for everyone? So what are your views on that, May?
I'd say there's a lot of collaboration going on, and there's a lot of efforts going on, like the UK BIM Alliance, the UK BIM Framework, various organizations trying to CDBB, trying to help people get guidance, but there isn't enough collaboration going on. And I'd say within thinking of project by project basis, what I always say to people is build in the collaboration into your contract terms, which sounds counterintuitive, but if you force people to talk to each other every 2 weeks, they'll find, wow, it's actually really better if we talk to each other and collaborate, and then that will become business as usual. I think there's a lot, whilst there's a lot of steps going on, it is still very much people having the buy-in to go out and look for that guidance, to incorporate it within their organizations. And there's possibly a lot more we could do to bring on the people who are still at the early stages and are wondering, well, how do I start, and where should I spend my money on, and where do I find the right tools?
Well, I think it certainly acts as a barrier to where you should start investing as well. So I'm certainly seeing firsthand that people are investing a lot of money only to find and discover that at the point of connectivity with the industry, they've made a mistake in their early investments because of some of the legal challenge. But it's a good thing. We don't seem to have any more questions, and we're 10 minutes out. So I can ad lib or make some more questions up myself. But I suppose one of the ones, Sarah, to you, is that we see a lot of organizations put a lot of money into their innovations and their products and development, only to see them fail at launch in the market. And I just wanted some guidance and some words of wisdom around that filtration process before it goes in the hopper, and sort of how do Arcadis test, and how do they test and make sure that those ones they want to follow through with are going to be robust enough at the end of the program.
Yeah, I mean, it's linked to probably a couple of points that have been covered actually. So there's a little bit about as innovation practitioners giving the client-facing parts of our business the confidence to allow their clients to be used as pilot environments. So again, I don't think that's something that we're used to doing. Often we're in a very formal contracting environment because we've been procured to do something through very formal channels. And very rarely is there an innovation clause in say that we're happy to participate in pilots. So part of the work that we've been doing is we've been talking more to our clients, and I've been talking to my peers in client organisations to say, you know, we are experimenting with things that might deliver better outcomes or might create solutions to some big problems. We need pilot environments to test that and to also get the feedback from you to see whether this is desirable. So working on, you know, technology means things are a lot more feasible, but are they desirable? Do we know what problem they're trying to solve, and are they viable? Does it deliver value to the customer? Does it deliver value to the organisation that's innovating? And they're the key questions that we're sort of grappling with. But equally, I think to the point on collaboration, collaborating with clients and groups of clients in our industry is also very healthy. So as more and more collaboration happens, the peers with clients need to think about what are the big problems we're trying to solve. And to May's point, we are collaborating in our industry, but we're collaborating on solutions. We're not collaborating on the really big problems. It feels like, you know, digital twins, that's a solution. What's the problem it's trying to solve? And are we all behind the problem? Because actually a digital twin can solve multiple problems. So what problem are we all getting behind? I think there was a question about reuse and retrofitting. This is a really great example. The starting point is always build something. It has been, because finance has been cheap and it's been easy to access money, and that's been the direction of travel. It keeps lots of people in jobs. So there's an economy that sits around that. But is that the right thing to do? And actually, you know, can we think of alternative ways to solve the problem and reuse those buildings and better understand those? And a digital twin would be a great way to create a digital profile of a building and think about the options, about what you might do in the interventions. So I think, you know, we've got to start to rethink some of that. And I reframing failure is something that keeps coming around when we talk about innovation, but I'm going to steal something from Simon Sinek, because I'm a bit of a groupie of Simon Sinek's on YouTube. And I like falling as a better sort of way of describing what we would ordinarily say failure, because if you're pushing boundaries, then you're often tripping up quite a lot, but you pick yourself up and move on. Whereas failure always comes with a bit of a catastrophic connotation. So it's also about reframing that in our minds to say, we are going to trip up and make some mistakes, but we'll be stronger for it, and the solutions will be stronger for it. And hopefully as a collective, we'll tackle some really big problems in our industry.
Good, great answer. Thank you for that. I think there is one more question, which is really you partly answered, which is this reuse and retrofitting, and what can digitalisation offer? I think that's quite a broad question, and it's a difficult one to capture. But maybe we'll consider that and put together a bit of a response when we sort of formalise all the questions as well. So Laura, I think that's end of questions. So I'm going to hand back.
Thank you ever so much, Andrew, for facilitating a very broad range of questions. And Sarah and May, yeah, well done on tackling all of those. It's a very broad subject, as we can see. So thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon, and particular thanks, of course, to May and to Sarah. We're really grateful for you sharing your perspectives and insights. And on that theme of collaboration, I think you know, it sort of underlines that theme of collaboration. For us to all understand different perspectives, I think will help us all. We'll send everybody who's attended today the recording of this webinar over the next few days, as well as the details of the final event in this series, which is on October the 20th, and I think you can sign up on the ACE website. Just before we finish though, I just wanted to hand over to Claire Clifford, because we have an ask on a project that ACE are conducting at the moment around career pathways, which a few of you might be interested in getting involved with. So Claire, over to you.
Super, thank you, Laura. And yeah, I extend my thanks to Sarah and May too. It was really, really informative. So thank you for joining us today. Just carrying on the theme of collaboration, actually, we are about to embark on a project that links future skills and the emerging professionals together. We're looking to interview a number of professionals from across the industry, both client and customer facing, non-client facing roles as well. So everybody within the industry, we would like to reach out and hear about your career journeys. So what brought you into the career potentially? Maybe there's some pivotal points that have helped guide and maybe even change your career within the industry. So anything really that's helped shape you and how you've got to today in terms of your career choices. So we really would love for you to reach back out to us. You'll have our contact details when we send around the recording. But if you'd like to get involved in the project, like I say, we're already going to be collaborating across a couple of AC forums. We're also going to link into other industry bodies as well. It's quite a large project, and we hope that by doing this, we'll be able to attract more talent into the industry. We'll be able to showcase some of the great skills that we have, transferable skills that we've brought in from maybe our original career paths, and we've crossed over into the jobs that you're doing today. So if you'd like to be part of this research, as I say, please reach out to us. We'll make sure you've got our contact details. And if it's just curiosity and you want to find out more before you commit to join, that's cool as well. Just reach out and ask any of us. We'll be happy to share more. So thank you for that, Lara.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Claire. We always like a bit of curiosity. So please lean in and contact us if you'd like to get involved. So it's just left for me to say thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you again to our panelists and to Andrew and Claire. I hope that everybody's found this really useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time. See you soon. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye now.
Thank you.